Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Healing Outside the Box. My name is Jean Tiberio, and I'm a nutritionist and a wellness coach. Today I'm going to talk about the relationship between fiber and heart disease, and it's episode 263. Although fiber is sometimes defined as the food that is not absorbed in your body, it's actually more complicated than that, and it is now on the eat more of these list for both lowering cholesterol and risk of heart disease. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics recently published recommendations for dietary fiber for all of us, and this pertains to the average person, whatever that is, eating approximately 2,000 calories per day. This is the same John Doe or Jane Doe that would be covered with the food labels. So the recs are 25 grams of dietary fiber per day for adult females, 38 grams of fiber per day for adult males. As we get older, we need a little less, and the recommendation is for about 21 grams for the women and 30 grams for the men. Now, some people estimate that only about 5% of Americans are getting that recommended amount of fiber. Because let's face it, folks, 25 to 38 grams is a lot of fiber. That would be at minimum 5 pretty good servings per day, probably more. But if people combine lifestyle changes, like exercise, meditation, etc., with dietary changes, we can sometimes lower our cholesterol levels fairly quickly in about 2 to 4 weeks. The more lifestyle changes we make, the greater will be the drop in cholesterol level and cardiac risk. For example, if people combine dietary changes with all sorts of things like relaxing, listening to music, laughing with friends, getting plenty of sleep, the chances of long-term success will improve. So the Academy recommends making lasting changes to both diet and lifestyle rather than quick fixes. And that certainly makes sense. Okay, first of all, do we need cholesterol? Do we? Do we? Well, yes and no. Cholesterol is absolutely necessary for many important functions. It supports the integrity of our cell walls, and we certainly want our cell walls to have integrity, for goodness sake. Cholesterol also makes lots of hormones, like testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen, also cortisol. The liver makes our bile with cholesterol, and we need bile, even though it's not a pleasant-sounding word, whenever we eat fat, so we can metabolize those dietary fats and absorb and move around fat-soluble vitamins. Cholesterol is also part of the synthesis of vitamin D. The precursor of active vitamin D is dehydrocholesterol. But also, no, we don't need cholesterol from food because we get cholesterol from our livers. Dietary cholesterol only appears in animal foods, so vegans taking in no cholesterol will still have plenty from what the liver makes. But we also don't have to be vegans to significantly lower our cholesterol levels. Small to moderate dietary changes will reduce cholesterol levels a bit, but as I've mentioned, the results will be better with a combination of different dietary strategies with moderate exercise and meditation. Smoking is also a huge factor with overall cardiac risk, but more specifically, smokers have a lower HDL. Smokers also have a higher triglyceride level, which is the storage form of fat, and both of these labs will improve when we quit smoking. Now, I think it's no longer breaking news that lowering saturated fat and trans fat in our diet will help our cholesterol levels and overall cardiac risk. But also keep in mind that snack foods, which we think of as high sugar and therefore not great for us, also have a lot of trans fats in them. Trans fats are oils that are artificially saturated, and they are considered as bad or worse as saturated fats. And snack foods have trans fats because saturating these oils keeps the snack foods on the shelf longer. In some cases, 2 or 3 years longer. Check out the sell-by date on your Ritz crackers if you don't believe me. My personal kryptonite happens to be Pepperidge Farm Milano cookies. Turns out they could probably survive a nuclear winter. Okay, we all know that if we lower the bad fats in concentrated sweets, we can lower our cholesterol levels. So let's talk about fiber, because this nutrient has a specific role to play. The tide is finally changing on access to high-fiber foods for low-income folks, and I'll get into that later. Here's what the research says. A diet rich in soluble fiber and vegetable protein sources like beans and nuts will reduce LDL cholesterol, the bad one, by an average of 28.6% in just 4 weeks. The benefits are also long-term, provided you stay with the fiber foods. A review in Progress in Cardiovascular Diseases said that this type of diet can reduce the 10-year risk of coronary heart disease by about 13%. Now, a drop of 28.6% is actually better than the American Heart Association with their diet, which we call a 30-40-30 diet. 30-40-30 is 30% protein, 40% carbohydrate, 30% fat. Their diet emphasizes less saturated and trans fat, but does not focus a lot on fiber. But that is starting to change. You're seeing more articles about plant-strong diets, and certain vegetables in particular. The Heart Association says that a high-fiber diet alone may reduce a person's cholesterol by 10%. But other publications, as I've mentioned, suggest it could be higher. Here's why there's discrepancy. Whenever you are adding something to your diet, at the same time you're taking away something else. Back in the good old days, let's call it the 70s, scientists showed that when people switched from fried eggs and bacon to oatmeal in the morning, their cholesterol levels went down. But how much of it was because they took away the saturated fat, and how much was due to the addition of soluble fiber? 50 years later, the jury is still out on that. But does it really matter if it's a win-win situation? Okay, what does fiber do? Let's define it first. Fiber is officially a nutrient and comes in two forms, soluble and insoluble. And it's defined exactly as you would guess. Soluble fiber is soluble in water and our precious bodily fluids. By the way, that was a reference to the movie Dr. Strangelove. And if you haven't seen it, I do highly recommend it. Anyway, insoluble fiber, on the other hand, is not soluble in water. We need some of both to stay healthy, and a good supply of both has been linked to reduction in chronic diseases, including cancer, heart disease, diabetes, diverticulitis, hiatal hernias, reflux disease, gallbladder disease, and last but not least, obesity. Now, this dietary fiber is usually a general term that includes both types, and the term that you will see on your food labels. And plenty of plant foods have both types of fiber in them. Let's talk about soluble fiber first. When we think of soluble fiber, we usually mention oats, fruits, nuts, and they are all good sources of soluble fiber, but there are others as well. The primary benefit associated with soluble fiber is that it binds with our precious bodily fluids for easy passage of food through the GI tract. It also grabs some cholesterol on the way through and proceeds to the other end with it, meaning less cholesterol is absorbed into your bloodstream. The soluble fiber, as it travels through your intestines and then colon, becomes food for beneficial bacteria in our gut. And it is now common knowledge that our microbiome or microbiota of healthy gut bacteria are responsible for a ton of good things. I have at least 3 podcast episodes on the importance of healthy gut bacteria, and I'll put some links in the show notes. Now, soluble fiber can and does lower cholesterol. As I've said, it tends to bind the cholesterol in a gel-like solution and then takes it to the other end. So soluble fiber is the particular fiber you want to lower your cholesterol and your weight. It will also help maintain normal blood sugars by slowing down the absorption of glucose into your bloodstream. That means that you don't have a sharp spike, which results in more insulin being produced and then a sharp drop. You want more of a gradual slope going up and going down instead of a sharp rise with a peak. And since diabetics also have a much higher risk of heart disease, that is a 2-for-1 deal with soluble fiber. Now, good sources of soluble fiber include fruits with skins, apples, pears, also the pitted fruits, peaches, nectarines, plums, also berries and bananas. For grains, we have oats, barley, but also whole grains from different sources will have some soluble. And then we have beans, especially black beans, but also kidney beans, lima beans, cannellini beans, etc. For vegetables, basically a lot of vegetables. Carrots, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes tops the group, but nearly every vegetable. Citrus fruits also have some. Peas and lentils, if you want to put them in a separate group. Nuts and seeds, and a type of fiber called psyllium, which is the ingredient in supplements such as Metamucil. And I'll give you a link to all of this if you want to look into it yourself. Now, insoluble fiber. This type of fiber keeps the digestive system healthy, especially our colon. Insoluble fiber helps speed up the transit time of food in our digestive tract and helps prevent constipation. Chronic constipation can be associated with other ailments, and some have suggested that it may reduce the risk of colorectal cancer if bowel movements are regular. That was in a 2019 review of different studies looking at fiber and risk of cancer. So fairly recent. Insoluble fiber is sometimes seen to make up the structure of plants. So it would be like the stem of the broccoli plant. And it's often called cellulose, which is one of the main components. Cellulose helps to keep the stool from getting hard and difficult to pass. It appears that insoluble fiber and soluble fiber also is related to lower blood pressure. Thinking about this, it could be simply a matter of substitution from salty convenience or processed foods to less salty produce. And perhaps also a fiber food that is bound to water that also contains salt will go out the other end with the undigested food. Either way, it's a good thing, because less salt will help you retain less fluid and can help maintain a normalized blood pressure. So what are good sources of insoluble fiber? They are, no surprise, wheat bran or whole wheat flour, also other whole grains. The outer layer or hull of the corn kernel contains insoluble fiber. Lots of vegetables. We have asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, carrots. The list goes on. But again, think of structural plants rather than soft, mushy plants. But all plants are good. Other sources of insoluble fiber are beans and nuts, some berries. So you're getting the idea. Fruits and vegetables. A minimum of 5 fruits and vegetables per day is what is recommended. Since most plants have both forms of fiber, eat plants is the message of the day. Now, for low-income people, there's a couple of new things on the horizon, and some of them have already happened. First of all, you have farmers markets, which are now providing a special program called HIP, or Healthy Incentive Program. This provides an additional $40 per month of totally free produce if you buy them at local farmers markets. Now, this is going gangbusters in Massachusetts, but Massachusetts, I know, is a relatively progressive state. If you're into promoting this, you may want to give your local senator or representative a little nudge in that direction because I believe it's been okayed in all 50 states. Remember, food stamps is a national program. If one state gets to do this, the other 49 states should be able to. So that's great. They don't even touch your food stamps. You just get additional $40 a month of produce. The other thing that's happening is that the food stamp benefits have gone up due to the COVID relief bill. So people have been seeing an additional $200 on their EBT cards every once in a while. There's another set of programs that everyone can take advantage of, and that's the less than perfect produce or misfits market type produce. Generally speaking, the produce is simply not a perfect shape, or maybe it's a different size, and doesn't sell well in the visual supermarket. And they can mail these boxes of produce to your door at about 40% of what it would normally cost. And that's fantastic because these are, again, smaller farmers, generally organic, and all healthy. You can even buy additional products like the good olive oils or even fish. To get more information about that, I would just Google imperfect produce or misfits market to find out more. If anyone needs advice on how their specific preferences can be put into a long-term plan to up the fiber and reduce the cholesterol, I would suggest seeing a dietitian or nutritionist. And lo and behold, I happen to be one. Look at that. So if you would like to work with me on your personal dietary plan, just send me a note on my website contact page, which is healingoutside-the-box.com, and I will get back to you. And I can start you off with a 30-minute free session if you sign up through the website. And it's all online, so location doesn't matter. Now that's all I have for you today. Be well, and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.